This is Tech Pulse, the show that keeps you in step with the technological world.
We have Sony and Disney begin streaming movies while they're still in the theaters. Over there in South Korea, NVIDIA Shield handheld console supports new Twitch app, and Babuinos transforms your smartphone to a game controller and more. All of this coming up on Tech Pulse today. Right along in June. This is the show where you get all your news and reviews dealing with the tech world, and we might as well jump right into our first story of the day. And the first story is dealing with Sony. According to The Verge, in an effort to cut down on piracy, Sony and Disney got together and they decided that they were going to test market releasing their movies simultaneously on at home and for in the theaters. So they decided they're going to begin streaming movies while they're still in the theaters, as opposed to waiting until a certain amount of time and has passed and so forth. Now, according to The Verge, they say in a bid to limit movie piracy in Asia, Disney and Sony has quietly begun testing a bold new on-demand service in South Korea, which offers movies to rent while they're still playing in theaters. As noted by the Wall Street Journal, two companies are the first U.S. studios to provide consumers anywhere with the option to buy a ticket to see a movie or watch it in their homes using their cable, internet, or satellite TV subscription. The movies they have is Django Unchained, Wreck-It Ralph, and Brave have all been made available as a part of the trial. Now, those are old movies here, but I guess in South Korea, maybe they're just being released. But they're saying that this is what they're doing to avoid piracy. And my first question when I hear a story like this is, how do you think it's going to affect the local theaters? Now, this is in South Korea, but
what are they doing to avoid piracy?
They are releasing simultaneously, like a movie comes out, right? Like, what's coming out this week? I forget what movie is coming, but let's say that Will Smith movie was coming out this week. They would release it online, not online, they would release it for streaming through your cable satellite provider the same time they release it in theaters. So you would have an option to buy a ticket to see it at home or go to the theaters. And they're saying by doing this, they cut down, no one needs to pirate it now because you can get it at home. And I'm saying that might be good for Sony. That might be good for Disney. But what about the local theaters? Well, so how do you think...
Kill the theater.
Yeah, that was my question. What do you... Now, I know Sony owns a bunch of theaters. Disney owns a bunch of their own theaters. But the local theaters that are privately owned, who will say, okay, Sony, if you do this, I'm not going to carry your movie. Is that really a move they can make? Because they're really going to hurt. If they don't carry those movies, nobody's going to go to their theater anyway. Is Sony really thinking this through? Or, is this the only move they can make? Now, as far as the consumer goes, do you think consumers will jump on board with something like this? Or is the movie experience something that people just can't get past? I understand you're just hearing this for the first time, but just with your brief hearing it now, how do you think it's going to affect? And what do you think the right move should be in terms of, because they're trying to avoid people, as you know, pirating the movie and going in and filming it and then releasing it online and, stuff like that. Well, how do you think they could...
It won't kill the piracy. It will cut into it, but it won't kill it. Because...
So what are you looking at, like a 50%, you think, or...
No,
is it not even that much?
No, I don't think so, because the way I see it, it's gonna be three tiers.
Right.
The moviegoers, the die-hard moviegoers who go to movies no matter what's going on.
Right.
They just enjoy going to the theater,
right,
being there, that theater experience. Even though the home theater is getting, almost
getting up there.
Yes,
right,
getting to that level. But the feeling of sitting in a theater with 100 people you can't replace that.
Right.
People.
Some people like that.
Some
Right.
people like that. Then there are the people now, like myself and Anne-Marie, who would want to see it, but can't or don't, or Anne-Marie doesn't think it's worth it to go spend $30
X amount of dollars, yeah.
You know, so that's the trick now. Are they gonna charge more for the home release?
They didn't say.
That's the key.
Yeah. What? Okay, let's say for the sake of argument, it's the same money as it was whatever ticket. It's the same.
No.
Like say it costs $6 to see it standard in the theaters, then it's going to cost you $6 at home.
I'm not going to any theater, and more people are going to stay home and watch it.
Right.
It's going to save them a lot less.
Right.
Maybe half the price. If it was going to be 3 people going to the theater, it would cost them maybe about $30. If they watch it at home,
right.
Probably $12, let's say.
Right.
Per ticket.
For a
I don't
ticket.
think they're going to do that.
But then, how would they limit tickets? In other words, if I'm in my home, I buy one ticket. How do they know I don't have a whole crowd of people in there with one ticket?
But they're not. They're not going to worry about that. What they're going to do is, they believe that more people, that's what they're gambling.
Right.
That more people will actually watch the movie, right?
Yeah.
Than the drop in moviegoers.
You mean watch it at home?
Yes. Because they're going to add me.
Right. Because now instead of you not seeing it,
I'm definitely
you're going to see it.
First release.
Right.
Because I've been waiting to see certain movies, and I'm thinking $30. If it's $15, I'm good with $15.
Right.
Versus $30.
Right.
So they're thinking that even if they were getting 10 million in the first, normally,
yeah, right.
If it drops to 5, they're going to add. I'm talking in terms of people now.
Right.
They're going to add 50.
So they make up the difference anyway.
They're going to make up the difference.
Sorry.
In the numbers.
So
they're
playing
a numbers game.
They're playing a numbers game. So what has to happen now is movie theaters, because you're right, home theaters have come a long way.
Yeah.
And people can get the same, because when I look at going to movies, like going out to see a movie and stuff like that, and I look at the theaters. I went into a theater recently, and when I looked at the screen, because I hadn't been in theater since like college days, long years ago. So I said, okay, let's just see what's happening, out in these theaters. Went out to the theater, and when I went inside, I'm like, I got this at home, and then I sat down, and the surround sound wasn't, for me, it wasn't good at all. It was just loud. Because the surround sound is supposed to be, as you know, because you deal with audio and stuff like that, surround sound is supposed to be selective in terms of certain sounds get sent to certain speakers based on where the person is. So if someone is walking up behind me, that sound is supposed to be channeled to the speakers behind me. It's not supposed to come from the speakers in front of me. If a car is going by from behind me, it should start behind, and then the sound travels to the speakers on the side and then to the front. That's how the audio is supposed to be set up. In this theater, it was just loud. They had all the sound coming at me from the front speakers and all around. There was no separation of sound in any of the speakers. You didn't hear anything coming from the sides in the front. You heard everything all around you loud. And so right away I was like, no, that's not... To me, loud isn't the mark of a good theater. No more than in music, singing loud doesn't mean you're singing well. And obviously, in a lot of African American settings, loud seems to be more the key rather than harmony. And I prefer if you're singing quietly but harmonized. To me, that sounds much better than just loud to show that you can bust a speaker or two. So this theater just had loud sound, and then it was supposed to be 4K. You know what I'm saying? Because Mary and I decided, we said, you know what, if we're because we hadn't been to theater in a while, so if we're going to do this, let's see the best they got. Let's go out and see the best they have, and then compare, not even compare, because we wasn't even thinking to compare it. But when I sat down and I saw what's supposed to be 4K, the thing didn't even look Blu-ray quality. To me, it didn't even look Blu-ray quality, and the screen didn't look as big as I remember when I used to go. You know what I'm saying? Now, obviously, my perspective has changed over the years, but, because way back in the day you had a 27-inch and that was huge in those days. And then when you went to the theater and they had this huge 100-inch, you're like, oh man, that's life size. But when I sat in there, I was like, if this is the best experience, and 4K 3D, for two of us, it was like $25, 4K 3D. So I figured, let me just see the best they have, and then that way I know what's today. And when I looked at that, I was like, this is exactly what I have at home. And even Mary said the same thing, like, but we got this already. So if theaters are going to survive with this model, this is my point. If theaters are going to survive with this new model that Disney and Sony are trying out, because they say this is a trial. Now, as you know, Devin, like the independent films have long been doing stuff like that in terms of, they release in theaters and they release online and stuff, because they're trying to get as many eyes, because they don't have the big budget. People don't know about them, so they're trying to get as many eyes on their film as possible. Sony and Disney don't have to do that, because everybody knows Sony, everybody knows Disney, and theaters pay them to get their movies in there because they know they're going to make it back in the crowds. You see what I'm saying? So this is new for the big budget blockbuster people like Sony and Disney. But if local theaters are going to survive, I think they're going to have to find a way to make the movie-going experience an experience, something that I can't get at home, because home theater has caught up with movies now. It's not before where you couldn't get, because, with CRT, if you tried to get my sister used to have a 45-inch CRT, and that thing was huge. That was a piece of furniture. You know what I'm saying? It was on wheels and stuff like that. But in those days, you're like, man, you got a massive TV. But you couldn't get too much bigger than 45-inch because where would you put it? Now you can get a 50-inch for $500. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to have all the frills. But you can get a 50-inch for. So immediately you got a big screen right there. So movie theaters have to find a way to make it an experience, like how IMAX is an experience, or like Universal, where they put you in these seats that shake and all this type of. It has to be an experience, because otherwise, this model here, which as a consumer I like, as a consumer, now if I owned a theater, I wouldn't like it, but as a consumer, I like it because it gives me the opportunity, rather than waiting, 6 months for it to come out on Blu-ray. I can just say, movie is coming out this weekend. Right. I'm going to buy a ticket on Sunday to see that bad boy right in my house. I could do that. So I think that, do you think local theaters, is this going to force them to change, or it's just going to shut them down? Well, what do you think about that? In terms of.
But what can they do?
I don't know.
I don't know what they can do.
But they would have to do something. Because if the experience that I saw is typical of various, and I know some theaters are better than others. I get that.
Free popcorn, I don't know. It sounds like they're in serious trouble. To be honest.
If this model works.
Yeah, if this model works, I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised that this didn't happen before.
Yeah.
Based on how technology is going.
Right.
But there is going to be a market of people that just don't have access to home theater.
Right, of course.
Yeah, there's going to be.
And like you say, there's a market of people that just like going to the theater. They like the experience of it.
I think what's going to happen is that they're going to make them smaller. I think movie theaters are going to get smaller and smaller, and they're going to have. They did that in New York. Well, all over they did that. That's what they actually did. Because theaters used to be huge.
Right.
And you have 500 people watching one movie.
Right.
Now they have 5 theaters in that one theater.
Right.
And you're watching, I think what's going to happen now, they have 10 theaters and a party next door.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because George Lucas was in an interview, and he said his vision of where he sees movies going, he says in the future, movies will all be like Broadway type shows. That's what it's going to be. And it's going to be a big theatrical type performance rather than the movie screens. Right. That's his, and I'm saying, I don't know, because there are things that you can do in movies that you can't do on a stage, and I think that's what separates Hollywood from Broadway. There's some people that like to see Broadway, but by far, Hollywood brings in more revenue than Broadway does. Absolutely. So I don't see it going that way. I mean, the guy is, he's in the film business for years, but I just don't see that going. So we're coming up on a break. We're going to talk more about this and our next story right after the break, coming right up here on Tech Pulse.